Clerk will read the last bill for the morning.
House Bill 3015, relating to amount paid to attend institutions of higher education by persons formerly in adoptive care and declaring an emergency.
Question now arises upon third reading and final passage of House Bill 3015A. Representative Bonham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 3015 would modify a provision of the law passed in 2011 that allows a child who is aged out of Oregon's foster care system to have access to free tuition at a public institution of higher education and extend it to apply to children who were adopted out of foster care system as well. We've heard from parents who are fostering teens that they are having to make the calculation of whether they do an adoption or give permanency, or whether they ensure that a child has tuition they'd otherwise be qualified for if they aged out of the system. Initially, when we first started talking about this with Ben West here from Oregon Foster Families First, I had not yet hired my staff for the session. Upon hiring Reina Gomez and walking through our stack of bills, what we had heard from other people actually became very personal for me, as Reina shared her personal story that she had lived this very scenario. Her foster parents walked her through the practical conversation of the cost of college and the benefits of not moving through the adoptive process. Now this family, they've got a lot of love for each other, and they were able to handle this situation in a very compassionate yet practical way. I would love for us to lift this burden from these families and eliminate the need for that conversation to ever take place again, and for these prospective adoptive parents and foster children to have clarity and predictability for their future. So moving forward, other than the retroactivity claims by kids who have already been adopted out and who choose an Oregon school, the measure will be fiscally neutral, as the state would have already had an obligation to these children as they age out of the system. So a family who has a child they adopt still has to be otherwise qualified under the 2011 parameters of the law. They must fill out a federal financial aid application, and they must have been aged 14 to 21 and have been in the foster placement system for 6 months prior to becoming adopted. That age range is something we should certainly watch into the future and see and track who is getting adopted and whether or not we want to adjust that in the future. So that's just something to flag for us. This change is an important tool in the toolbox towards creating permanency for teens in the system. If passed, House Bill 3015 means they won't have to choose between a permanent adoptive family and the opportunity for college tuition. Again, I'd love to send special thanks out to Ben West for bringing this important topic to us, and for Representative Hayden and Neron for their early adoption into the process here and support throughout. This is a great bill, and I urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Hayden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Colleagues, we have before us here House Bill 3015 today. Every once in a while through this legislative session, we have the opportunity to look at the bill and collectively be proud. I think today you have the opportunity to be proud with those of your colleagues that, and I notice, continually joining this bill. Thank you very much for more sponsorship coming on. I'd like us all to be on this bill. What we're talking about here is the fact that we have in Oregon children that haven't had the home that we would hope that all children have. And so they go into the foster care system, and we've committed prior funds for those children to have an education, including higher education, not just K through 12. This bill is a fairly simple bill. It's a small bill, and if you look at some of the meeting materials that was presented on the bill, I want to clarify some of those. I've given you a handout today, a floor letter that is from the Department of Human Services that shares with you the numbers of finalized adoptions, and we can clearly see from that chart on your desk today that that number is dropping. You can also see from that chart the cost of tuition. We know that's increasing, and we've also broken out the age categories of the children that get adopted in Oregon. What this bill today is specifically talking about children 14 and older. So I want to make that clear. Some of the meeting materials talked about the cost of multi-thousand students. We already have that obligation to them. This one is talking about specifically from the Department of Human Services. In 2017, 38 students would be eligible, or 38 children would be eligible. 2016, 42. 2015, 43. 2014, 33 students. 2013, 30 students. And 2012, 32 students. Now, we don't have specific information because we can't get that name by name. I don't know how many moved out of state, but we're talking a total N number, or a total number of 218 students that might be eligible for this if they were lucky enough to be adopted by a family to have higher education. Their choice today with families that are looking at adopting teens, you can see how low the numbers is. It's an average of 36 per year that get adopted. That family has to decide, can I take on a $100,000 liability to help this child get through higher education? Can I do that? Or do I leave them in the foster care system? Children shouldn't have to be forced between a education benefit that they already have or being joined with a family. I strongly urge you to support this bill. For me, this is a bill of a step in the right direction. I would love to see all adoptions. The argument is, well, if you adopt somebody at 0 to 3, you can put a 529 plan in. That's true, but it's still expensive. When they're 14, you don't have the option of that 529 plan to build that college fund for them. I strongly support this bill and urge your support. Thank you, Mrs. Speaker, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Bonham, would you like to close? He does not. Those of the opinion the bill should pass will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will open the voting system. House Bill 3015A, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed.